Hey everyone, I'm gonna finish this sandblasted pipe. You can do a rough finish as well. We're gonna use buckskin for the color. What I've done before, after the sandblast, or say you're carving, I've taken some super fine steel wool and have brushed the surface to knock off any hard edges. And then I did sand the smooth areas to open up the grain, and softened all the edges. That way it takes the color better and there's no sharp edges that can get chipped. So the first thing we're going to do is just apply stain, which is very easy. Dip a pipe cleaner in there. Just make sure it's not too much. And buckskin's real nice. Gives nice color. This one could be natural, but I like the way the buckskin looks. Just go around there and apply the stain evenly, carefully, and quickly. And that way you can get a nice even coating everywhere. And usually with some stains, not with the buckskin, you can almost finish right away, and I'm going to put a shellac finish on here. But some of the other stains, you have to wait for the dye to really set in. For some reason, this buckskin seems to set very quickly, where it's not really necessary to dry it. I'm going to dry it just a little bit here with the heat gun, just to make sure I get all the alcohol out. But the shellac does have alcohol in it, so it really doesn't matter that much. Just want to make sure I get kind of an even color. Some areas you're going to have to put a little bit more dye than the others, because of the way it absorbs. That's why I have this paper towel here to kind of dab it out. Just kind of blending it now. I'm gonna dye the shank face. I know some people leave that open. It's fine either way. And that's almost done here. And usually I try to avoid getting it inside the bowl, but I always get a little bit, and I'm going to come back and sand that later. But now, ideally you want to just let it sit to dry, but if you're under time constraint like me, because I'm doing this video, I'm going to use a heat gun. Just do a quick dry. It's going to look like it changes color, but once I put the shellac finish on, it'll go right back. And now for the shellac finish, I'm using a really high quality shellac, the raw crafted crumble flakes. There are plenty of other shellacs out there in the market that are high quality, but this one costs really a lot less. And then I've got a cup of just pure denatured alcohol here, and then I've got a little bobble of cheesecloth, and there's a little bit of oil on here. I use a polymerized tung oil, and there's about 1 or 2 drops total on the surface of this. I spread it out, and this is used to lubricate to remove the excess shellac. So we're going to apply the shellac right now, and then apply a second coat, and then remove the excess. So I'm going to dip it in here, swab it off, and then I'm going to pat it on the paper towel to get the excess off, and just start painting the pipe. And I'll continuously do this. And there, a little too much went on, and you don't really want that to happen. You don't want it to pull on there. You want it to spread out nicely. So you have to act quick if you do put too much on there to get that excess to spread out. And you just keep doing this little by little. I mean, ideally you want to go pretty quick, but you want to be accurate and get a nice even coating on there. And I am kind of flooding the pores, and then when I come back to remove it, it'll be pretty nice. You do have to kind of watch the smooth areas a little bit. You'll put too much on there, and you definitely want to take off the excess off the smooth areas, because you don't want it to be built on top of the smooth areas. And even the sandblast areas, you really don't want it to be built on top. You want to embed a layer into the wood, into the grain. Now there's a lot of talk about, well, the shellac seals the wood. It does seal it a little bit, but there's still openings where there is going to be something that passes through. I mean, sealing it perfectly, you'd have to put a lot of shellac on there and then not take it off, and you'd have to put multiple layers. I don't necessarily think sealing the exterior will really affect the smoking qualities, and in my experience, it hasn't. However, my tastes are not so refined as others are, so that's something I think can be different for each person. The wood, I don't believe it will wick the moisture that quickly, and I've done many experiments with it, and others have it as well. Now I'm kind of going over, I covered the entire pipe, and now I'm kind of going over with a second coating. Usually I let it sit for a minute before I go for the second coating, but since we're on the video, I want to finish this up. So I'm carefully looking at it. You want to have very good lighting so you can see where it's not absorbing, and you can hit those areas up again and then spread. You're always spreading. So it's like when you're buffing a pipe, you don't want to just hit the one area. You want to continuously be moving and spreading around, otherwise you'll take too much off an area. Whereas this, you're adding to it. And so you don't want to add too much to one area, and you want to keep spreading it out, and you want it to blend nicely. And it's going to look really shiny when I'm finished putting the shellac on, and it would stay that way if I didn't do the next step, which is removing that excess off of there. And it's kind of like a little French polish is what I do, but I'm actually using a very thin down shellac for it. I just saw a dry spot, and I'm trying to spot it again. There it is. Let's see, one more little dry spot. I'm going to try to get that without putting too much on there. Now the end of the shank, I'm actually going to finish that to a high polish. That's another whole other technique. I'm not going to do video on that. You'll have to figure that out by yourself. but you have to be careful because it's a flush fit. So here's the stem, which I need to finish still, but I always finish the pipe so I can finish it off, and then I'll tape it off and then file the stem down and finish that out. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm gonna blow on it because there may be areas where it absorbs in and then it'll have that dry spot again. So I want to make sure that I get that. And I already see a couple places where it's starting to do that. So then I can go over them again. That's why I usually wait in order for the second coating, because then it'll set in a little bit. And I don't wait long. It's only a few minutes usually. All right, I think we're good there. Watch out for fibers from your brush. I just use regular bristle brush. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of the shellac and put it into the alcohol. Not much at all. So it's hard to tell, but it's just like a few drops, just to make sure that the alcohol is not just alcohol. And I'm going to grab a glove if I can find it, and I'll be right back. All right, so the reason why I'm wearing a glove because I am using denatured alcohol, which I've gotten way too much on myself over the years, so I'm a little extra careful now. So I'm going to take this bauble, a cheesecloth here, I'm going to dip it into my solution, squeeze it out completely, as much as possible, and then dab it on the paper towel to get as much off as possible. Whoops. And then now I have to be fast with this. I'm going to wipe down the entire pipe. And it takes a significant amount of focus because you have to remember where you're going over. You got to keep a memory. And you're basically taking off excess shellac, excess stain, and you're blending the finish. So what I'm going to be left with is a really even satin finish on this instead of a super shiny, and that's what I prefer. And just keep going around on it. And if you're visually, you want to really pay attention so you can pinpoint where you can need to take more off or blend the finish. So make sure you have plenty of lighting. And it's still going to look shiny when I get done with this process, but then it will, as it dries, you'll start to see the satin type finish on it. Now usually I have two of these ready at hand so I can just switch, but I'm just going to reuse this one because I forgot. And there's one more little step I forgot about. I'm going to do it on this after I'm done with this process. It's to clean up the smooth areas. I'm going to dip this again, squeeze it out, and then really dab it out. I don't want much alcohol in there at all because I'm just using it to remove the excess shellac. It's mostly removing it from the high points, but it also gets in there. The cheesecloth is great because it doesn't catch on anything and it doesn't leave fuzz, or it leaves a microscopic fuzz, which I can't see. So now I will buff this on a buffing wheel that barely has any compound on it, and I'll only use the Triple E or Red Rouge but it barely has anything on there, so it's more of a polish. And then I will hit it on the wax wheel it's more of a protective coating than anything. It doesn't really add any shine to it or anything, because I'm trying to avoid the shine. I don't want a super shine on the sandblast. I want it to be a nice kind of even satin finish. Okay, so I think I got it pretty good. We'll see what happens later, and I can always come back and do a refinish on it, but I think I got it. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few Q-tips here, and I'm going to do the kind of same process, but on a microscopic level or on a smaller, area, to just focus in on the smooth areas to wipe off that excess shellac, because I do not want to deal with streaks after it dries. And there's plenty of stain and shellac on the finish that it will not disrupt what you've done on the sandblast portion. And once you're saturated with the shellac, you need to start with the fresh surface. And so those smooth areas are going to look a little dull, but then once I polish it up, they'll shine right up. I think I got those. And now the face. Let's go one more. Remember, this diluted shellac is pretty much just alcohol. There's only a few drops of shellac in there, so it's just pulling off excess. I think I got it. I'm going to inspect it just to make sure. Looks like I got it. So that's it. It should look like that. It's like a little satiny. There's a little shine on the inside, but when I go to buff it, that's going to even out the shine on it, and you're going to have a really nice even satin type finish. Now that requires you to do some prep to knock off those edges with either some steel wool. You can use sandpaper, but it doesn't really get in there. Certain nylon brushes will work, especially if you have them spinning. But this guy I'm going to finish up later, and I'll post up pictures of the finished pipe at a later time. If you have any questions, you can comment here or message me privately, or call me if you got my number. Happy to talk to you, but I'll probably have to call you back. Good luck.